Craig, great to have you here in Rome.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, brilliant. Look, we've been talking for at least over a year or so. The plant's getting you. So we've been talking for at least a year or so, right? That one of our frustrations that we deal with in our industry, and I see it a lot with the robotics side, of course,
Right.
is what I would say is the failure for people to genuinely commercialize correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I know that you are super passionate about this. So I just wanted to have a quick conversation today to pick your brain a little bit and just get your thoughts on. The first thing I would say is, and you see it also with the robotics companies as well, why are so many people struggling to commercialize their products?
In my opinion, we all come from, well, not all, but the vast majority of us come from a large strategic, right? Everybody knows the logos of a large strategic. And in the US, in Europe, in Asia, in South America, whether you're dealing with a group purchasing organization or whether you're dealing with an individual hospitals, there's processes that take place to where the hospitals and the health systems need to really control how many vendors and how many products are coming into that hospital to be part of a surgeon's repertoire.
Yeah.
At least, I would say, from a US and European perspective, people try to model and put into motion the commercial process the way they were taught and modeled at the large strategics.
Yeah.
I think that is the number one mistake of a startup or a small medium enterprise, that they try to prep, launch, and then after the launch manage the commercialization process. And that is why there's such a high 77% failure rate where companies have to permanently shut their doors, and it's not due to M&A.
Yeah.
It's due to low customer adoption. And that is why we have so much failure in our industry, in the healthcare technology industry, because there's just low customer adoption because they're not commercializing correctly, because they try to do it the way they learned at the large strategics.
He wouldn't, and I use the word as well, commercialization. I also feel that there's a confusion that people often mix up. They think that commercialization is outselling. They think it's sales, right?
Right.
So, I mean, give me your view on that, because I know you've been very passionate about the fact that it's not just about you have a product, you get clearance, day after you go out and sell.
Well, selling is nothing more than getting people to adopt that service or product that you are focusing on your targeted market. Commercialization, like you say, it's more than just selling. Commercialization actually starts at the market research phase. There's 10 components of commercialization. The first component is market research. Unfortunately, the vast majority of market research is either incomplete or inaccurate because there's so much biased. And if since commercialization starts at market research, if your market research is just a little bit off, it throws all the other 9 components off. So then you're going to have market research on a product or service. Then you're going to do product or service design. Well, if your market research is off, then your product design and your product development is going to be off. Then you're going to spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on regulatory. Well, then if your product development and market research is off, you've just spent hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars on regulatory. Then you're going to go into product manufacturing, and you see how it just curveballs. It's just a daisy chain.
It's like building a house and not having the foundation.
Right.
So,
right.
And I agree with that. And I actually do see a lot of, and I even see it with a lot of the robot companies, there's a massive drive on the technology from what I invent in my head, and then I'll work the rest out later. I think you and I both have just learned, I mean, not that we come from the school, we came from the same school of J&J, but I think what we've learned in the years is that you have to approach this different as a startup especially.
Oh yeah.
And if you don't get that right, no matter what you're doing, no matter how good your product is, if you don't get the commercialization part of it right, it's a massive uphill struggle where majority of companies end up failing, running out of money before they get to break even.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that people say, well, we ran out of money because we didn't have enough investment capital. Well, sometimes that is true. But at the end of the day, if you've been able to get through the beginning portion of all, the few steps of commercialization to product launch, and then after that, your goal is 4 things: high levels of awareness of the company and product or service to the targeted market. If you do that right, you'll have high levels of customer attraction, or at least prospect attraction. And if you do that right, then you'll transform those prospects into paying customers, and you'll have high levels of customer adoption. If you give them a wow experience of them using your product or service, then you'll have a high rate of customer retention, which will then turn those customers into clients.
Yeah, and I think that is a thing that people miss. They think that I've sold one, so therefore that's the end of it, right? They don't realize it's the long-term building relationships of the customer over a very long term. I've always said, especially with a robot, so selling a robot is hard, okay?
Very hard.
But getting them to use it and the adoption curve is harder, and then getting them to keep using it in the future is the hardest.
That's the retention.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people still missing that, and I'm watching that out in the field of robotics at the minute, and I'm watching a lot of wheels spinning on getting demos, a lot of wheels spinning on getting the first few cases, and then I don't see them retaining those customers, and people send the robots back and revert back to what they know, which is intuitive, and then that's what they revert back to.
Right, because they're not having a wow experience. Either the people that are leading the company or responsible for the commercial strategy of that company is not creating a wow experience or a differentiation to say, hey, maybe for a few cases you use the Da Vinci, right, for these few cases, but the way our console is set up and the way our arms are set up, or even if it's not robotic, right, use this technology on this type of procedure because you're going to get a better X, Y, and Z, whatever that might be. Yeah. And people are, again, this is the problem. People bring what they know and they try to model it and make it, you're sticking an oval into a circle, or sticking a circle into an oval. They're both round, but they're not the same. Yeah. Right? An orange and an apple are both round and they're both fruit, but they're not the same. Yeah. So people just try to lump them together, right? And that's how they are going into the commercialization process. They say, well, but marketing is just going out and letting people know about our product and service. Yes, when you boil it all down, that is what marketing is, but that's the 4th component of commercialization. But what about branding? Branding is about when people think of robotic surgery, are they thinking of you or are they thinking of the competitor? Yeah. Right? Business is treated like a game, and I think businesses should be more treated like war. Either you get the business or your competitors get the business. Yeah. There's no in between. That's why I always say that business is more war than it is a game.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think one of the problems that I keep asking on this is, I don't think that whatever we talk about this often, none of this is like rocket science, okay? It's really not. Why is it that you think that so few leaders in the companies do this well, especially in the startups? What is it that you think is stopping them from just taking a step back and saying, okay, if I do this in the same way I do product development through stage gates, if I do this the same way that I do anything like the legal, for some reason it just gets like bolted on the end. What do you think? What is the mentality that's happening here?
There's really, if we look over the last probably 30 to 40 years from when we were kids, right, or even in high school, and we started learning how people buy, because we bought a certain way back then, right, and we've evolved over the years. The way people have bought from the 70s to basically the COVID pandemic has pretty much been identical in the way people buy, whether it's a B2C or B2B. Yeah. The COVID pandemic completely changed how people buy, right? And the psychology of why people buy and how they buy. Now that we're in 2025 and we're post-COVID pandemic, where everybody was shut down and had to completely change how they purchase products and services, we're now in a state where people think they know how to commercialize well because they're reverting back to the last 35, 40 years since the 70s. But now they're kind of stuck and going, but we've done everything the last 20 years the same way and it's worked. Why isn't it working now? The reason it's not working now is because people are purchasing things different. There's a level of buyer's resistance that is at an epidemic level now, whether it's B2B or B2C, and buyer's resistance is just so high. Consultative selling or consultative communication and marketing, it's not working. It's not cutting through the noise in the way people buy.
So,
I know I opened up a can of worms.
No. But I think you're right. I think a lot of the old styles of selling just don't work anymore.
They don't. You have to use a persuasion-based emotional dialogue.
Yeah.
Right, in order to cut through the noise and to cut through the buyer's resistance.
Yeah.
And it's all persuasion-based questioning and conversation now. And
I think that it's a science, right? It's definitely a science.
100%.
And what I'm still kind of seeing is people are winging it. This is the thing that I just find mad. I see the spreadsheets they build and the sales ramps, and then their natural thing, and especially in the US, is just let's go and hire a couple of reps and let's dot them around the country and just let them go off and sell. And I'm not seeing a systematic approach in many, because some companies do it well, some companies do it really brilliantly, but I'm not seeing a systematic approach to the commercialization. It literally is get a bunch of sales reps and let them go off and sell.
It's the greatest thing that you can do to spend a lot of money and have very little results.
Yeah.
Right? I think they should use a 4-part framework. They should use public relations in an uncommon and unconventional way to create high levels of company and product or service awareness, right? And there's ways to do that specifically that I'm working with some of my clients on. The second thing is if you do that right, you're going to have high levels of attention. And attention is nothing more to say of a potential customer, a prospect to say, I want to learn more. If you can get them to say, I want to learn more, either silently or verbally out loud, the sales portion of it is nothing more than somebody saying, are you ready to adopt this into your repertoire? Whatever that repertoire is.
Yeah.
For a surgeon, it's going to be at some point of their surgical intervention, right?
And what about timing wise on this, right? So there's another element to this, which is the timing. I mean, when I was doing the surgical robotics, we were doing the groundwork of getting the attraction or the pull from the market sort of two something years before we went out and actually did any hardcore selling. Is that still relevant today? Is it still these long cycle times and people got to be preparing commercialization way in advance?
I think you need to. I mean, right now you've got more products out there than people to buy them, right? So how are you going to create the awareness, the attention, and the potential adoption of that target market that you're focused on? And if you're dealing with a hospital or surgery center or any type of healthcare patient treatment entity, that cycle is getting longer and longer and longer and longer before they pull the trigger and actually adopt that technology, right? So the longer you can prepare, and I say it's 18 to 24 months, if you're not bringing in either somebody full-time or on a fractional basis or on a consultant basis to help you navigate how do we start the process of creating the awareness of the problem that your product and service is going to solve. I always say it's kind of like a 3-step process. Do a public relations campaign that talks about the problem that you're solving without telling them that you're solving it. Just bring it out in the awareness to open, right? Yeah. Open that can of worms. Then do some press releases and some public relations on the options that can treat the problem or the issue. Yeah. And then then do another PR, campaign that talks about your product or service being the best in class.
Yeah.
That is one of the ways, or probably one of the most effective ways to do it from a psychology of product, company, and buyer awareness, so that you can spend less money later on instead of taking all that VC money and, I don't want to say wasting it, but not using it as effectively to go out and hire a bunch of sales reps and you haven't created the first two awareness and attraction.
Now, a lot of people will be watching this, so I get a mixed crowd who watch what I put out.
Yeah.
And some of them are, they're commercially more savvy people, and this probably resonates a little bit with them. But I have a lot which are first-time founders who come from technological side or from R&D side. And I think, again, I just want to reiterate and re-stress, the thing that I think is one of the big problems is they have the product ideation, then they do the product development, then they do the regulatory, then they get the clearance, and then they think, okay, now we're going to start selling this thing.
No.
and again, I'm really speaking to that group right now, because I want to make sure that you, even if we're repeating it again, I just want you to be really clear on the fact that you need to engage a commercialization specialist almost at the beginning to understand how the end game comes out. And in the book that I've just released, I always say start at the end to work at the beginning.
And if people aren't buying your book, and this is not a plug for your book is literally a survival guide. And there's not enough of us out there that eat, sleep, drink, and obsess in commercialization, commercial strategy, right? There's just not enough of us. And I wish there was, because it's like you said in the beginning of this conversation, people think commercialization is just getting a few sales aids and market brochures out there and you just start knocking on the doors. Couldn't be further from the truth. Yeah. And so my thing is if there were just more of us out there that could come alongside these founders and come alongside these small, medium enterprises that are starting to grow and gain momentum, by having somebody like you or me or somebody like us that obsesses over commercialization and commercial strategy, there would be a lot less VC companies losing money.
Yeah.
And there would be a lot less, I guess, for lack of a better term, falsifying what success is. Yeah. And I'll say it like this: in the U.S., the Small Business Administration at SBA.gov and private equity firms like KKR, Apollo, Blackstone, investment banks like Goldman Sachs have all validated that these startup companies who are well funded with the VCs, 55% of them permanently shut their doors at 5 years or less. 77% of these companies are permanently shutting their doors within their 8th to 10th anniversary. And it's not due to mergers and acquisitions, like I said earlier. If people want to see those stats come down, then they got to start doing things in an uncommon, unconventional way and do the contrarian thing that they've learned over the years. Warren Buffett said, people say to Warren Buffett all the time, how are you the most successful investor that's ever lived? And he laughs and he says, we got to just look at the news and look at what people are doing and just do the opposite. Right? Like that's literally what he said, at one of the Berkshire Hathaway meetings. So I would just say to the people watching and listening is, if you think that you understand commercialization, bring somebody in like you or me and let us come alongside of you and let us save you a lot of heartache, a lot of time, and a lot of money so that you can become profitable sooner. And, the data shows as well, 6.6% of companies in the United States specifically, and I bet you Europe might be pretty similar, although I can't find the data for Europe. I've been looking for it.
No one can find data for Europe.
Well, 33.6 million companies in the United States that have 500 or less employees in them. It makes up 99.2% of employment in the U.S. And yet, only 40% of companies are profitable. Only 6.6% of companies ever hit $1 million in annual revenue.
Yeah.
So people say, well, Craig, we're really looking for that next unicorn. Well, if you look at the data that KKR and Apollo and Goldman Sachs and SBA.gov have all validated, if your company hits $1 million in revenue, you are a unicorn. You're 6.6%.
Yeah.
Of all the companies in the world, or at least the United States, you are rare. because most companies are not hitting $1 million in revenue.
So let me, because we've got only 5 minutes left. There's probably two groups that might be watching this. So one is they're just starting out on the journey, and I think we've covered that well. Get in early, do all that. But I guarantee you, there's people watching this, whether they want to admit it or not, and it is hard to admit it. And admit it if it's happening.
Just put down the ego and just say,
Yeah.
I need help.
So,
and you're not bad if you need help.
No, you're not. And
You're actually wise.
But there's a whole bunch of companies that have been out there trying to commercialize for a long time, very unsuccessfully, and they've turned over their VP of sales 3 or 4 times, and they've churned their sales reps, and they've had people leaving, and they just sit there going, why are people not buying our product? You know, it's great, and the product's great, and generally a lot of products are bad, but a lot of products are good. Give me your sort of like little bit of words of wisdom for those companies that are like 8 years into their journey, they've tried to commercialize, and they're just really struggling to hit sales numbers and they can't work it out. What would you give us some words of wisdom on that?
First thing is bring somebody in, admit that you don't know it all, put the ego down. It is rather, in my view, I would rather get it right than be right, right, and go broke. I would rather get it right and say, okay, Craig, Steve, we brought you in here for a few months, right? Just a few days a month. You know, even if it's 2 or 3 days a month, whatever, 1 day a month, whatever. What are we doing wrong? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to do a commercialization audit of all 10 components of commercialization. Where is the kryptonite in each one of the 10 components of commercialization that you need to locate, identify, or locate, uncover, identify, eradicate, and replace? Right? Yeah. Do an audit of your commercialization process. Get somebody outside of the company that can see the whole forest, right? I can't see the whole forest in my company. I got to have outside people. That's why I pay for coaches, right? That's why we talk all the time. And what you want to do is when you find that kryptonite that's ripping off the effectiveness of your company, what you want to do then is incorporate the 4-part framework. How can I create high levels of attention of the company and product or service that I'm offering to the target market? How can I do that right so I get high levels of attention? If I can get high levels of attention, curiosity is automatically going to build, right? And you're going to end up converting prospects to paying customers. Yeah. If they have a wow experience and a good experience with your product or service, guess what? You will turn them from a customer to a client, and you can retain them as a client through the product life cycle until the next technology that comes out that's actually more effective.
So it's interesting. What you didn't say there is just fire your VP of sales, turn everyone over and keep doing the same thing.
No, because it probably isn't necessarily the person. Exactly. It could be the person, but before you just give them the boot and kick them out, do an audit. Just like the IRS would do an audit or a forensic audit of the books, right, of the accounting books. Do a forensic audit of the commercialization process. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I've developed and is currently in the process of being trademarked, is a commercialization audit, so that we can find where are the little pieces of kryptonite that's ripping off our effectiveness.
So I'm going to summarize that back. I think I agree totally. And again, for some of the generation who don't know what kryptonite is, because that's probably an old thing that us old guys know.
Superman.
Yeah, and he sort of repels him. So, but I think trying to put that into some very simple lay terms is, first of all, don't panic, number one. Number two, don't immediately think it's just that people are shit in your organization and
Correct.
Therefore it's them that's bad.
Right.
And then just...
Although it could be.
It can be.
But don't assume it right away. Yeah, you're spot on, man.
And what you got to do is you got to actually, first of all, ask, if you don't even have a commercialization process to go, and that's a big red flag, right? If there's no process behind what you're doing, it's just literally throw some brochures out, make sure we've got some good things about what our technology does, and let the sales reps go and rely on their old relationships and knock on doors.
Relationship selling isn't working anymore.
It's gone.
It is gone.
Because you have back committees, you have people...
100%.
So I think the first thing you got to do if you're in a company is say, well, do we even have a process? And if we don't have a process, and then if you have got a process, dissect it out, as you say, like an audit, and IRS for those non-US people is the sort of like the tax man who comes in and checks your books.
Right.
But what you got to do is you've got to break down what do you do on a daily basis, what are you doing on a monthly basis, what's your quarterly plan, what does the plan and the strategy, the process look like, and is there anything within that process that's literally stopping sales happening? That's one of the things that I
Right.
There's a lot of things that you do that actually turn people off in a really big way to stop it happening.
Well, and I've been guilty of it myself.
Yeah, I think we all have. You know, we all have fumbled on the sales side as well. And then what you've got to do is you've got to come back and say, okay, where are the pieces of this that need fixing? And then go in and get professional outside help, just like you would for a consultancy from McKinsey. I don't want to use McKinsey, I don't like McKinsey. Sorry, McKinsey. But you need somebody from the outside who's not close to the baby.
And who's mastered their business craft.
Yes.
Somebody who's literally a sensei for that specific craft in business.
Exactly. And I think besides being the craft, you know, knowing what to do, it's also can't be emotionally attached to it. This is the other problem that people say.
But they're in love with their product.
They're in love with the product. And everyone's out there saying, everyone else is struggling out there, but my product's different. Everyone else's product out there mustn't be that good. My product's different. Of course, if I just keep building it, they're going to come and they're going to buy it. And that's another reference.
I wish that was the case, actually.
I wish it was, but it's not. And again, it's often it's not the product. It's just that you're not commercializing in the correct way. So I think there's, just to sort of finish up here, there's two groups. There's the groups who are building from the start, get in early, do the commercialization process. And for those that are already in there struggling with their commercialization, then what you need to do is you need to go in, audit it, check it, see what's happening before you throw everybody out.
100%.
Check what is actually causing the problems, have a structured way, and then rebuild your commercialization process and go at it again in a properly structured way under guidance.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like healthcare today, right? We say prevention is more effective and it's a lot less expensive than episodic-based care, right?
Yeah.
And so it's no different. Treat your business like the human body. If you haven't product launched yet, if you haven't launched that product yet, get a commercialization plan. Get a detailed, robust, multi-page commercialization plan that you can adjust every 6 to 12 months, right? So that you know exactly where to do. I always tell people, if you're trying to get from Chicago and you want to drive to Los Angeles, you probably should know where the rest areas are, what interstates, motorways you're going to take, where the, where you can change a tire if you get a flat, or, just in general. The company needs to be the same way. If you're a company that hasn't launched the product yet, get a commercialization plan. I always suggest the more robust, the more detailed commercialization plan that you have, and I'm talking whether it's 15 pages, 30 pages. I just did one for a company that was 55 pages. Yeah. And guess what? If they read it and if they follow it, they're going to prevent a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
But if they've already launched that product and they're 3 months in, 1 year in, 2 years in, and they're not seeing that 30% growth and 30% customer adoption rate, quarter over quarter, there's something wrong, then get that audit and get somebody in there that can do a forensic audit on your commercialization. And you might spend 20 or 30,000, but guess what? When you find out where that kryptonite is that's ripping you and stealing the effectiveness of that company's, plans and efforts, guess what? You can make millions and be part of that 6.6% that actually makes $1 million in revenue in that 1 year. Or if you're more effective than not, you can be part of that 0.28% of companies that make 10 million in an annual fiscal year.
So my final thing to everybody is tomorrow, wake up in the morning and say, I want to see our commercialization plan. And I guarantee you, more than half of you watching this, your commercialization plan is an Excel spreadsheet of your projected sales. That's going to be one of the things that you're going to see.
Yep.
There won't be a well-written, I don't mean just sales plan, but there won't be a well-written, fully documented, fleshed out commercialization plan, and be even just 1 page as a 1-page game plan. I've seen that, and that's been effective.
I have, yeah.
All the way up to a 50 page. It doesn't really matter, okay? what I would be suggesting to everybody is, if you can't pull out or pull up or have some kind of PowerPoint or that actually is a plan, and I don't mean just fantasy out, I mean a detailed plan, where we're going, why we're going, what we're doing, how we're doing, the different things, roles of marketing, the roles of the commercialization,
Absolutely.
the sales team, the roles of post-market surveillance, the whole plan.
All 10 components
All 10 components.
of commercialization.
If you can't do that tomorrow, then I suggest that you think about getting a plan in place. And again, Craig, he knows how to do it. So if you're in the US,
You too as well.
but if you're in the US, then it doesn't have to be Craig, but find somebody who really knows what they're doing for commercialization,
Yeah.
and it'll sort of save that heartache.
100%.
Cool. Well, thanks very much.
You're welcome, dude.
Man.
Thanks
Good
for
to see
having
you.
me. This was awesome. I love Italy. I love coming here.
Good. Catch you on the next one.